We ate at a restaurant where 9,000 people died. It's in a ghost town just outside of Sedona, Arizona.
You're listening to Travel FOMO, a podcast for people self-diagnosed with wanderlust.
Welcome to the Travel FOMO podcast. My name is Jamin and Hilarie, and I am here with the person who is into anything as long as the word ghost is in front of it, Hilarie.
I love me some ghost towns and some ghosts.
You love ghost anything.
Yeah, I'm like super interested in.
Have you ever seen
the
something that had the word like haunted in front of it that didn't automatically pique your interest?
If something looks super cheesy, then I'll be like, meh. But
so like the buses, I feel like most big European cities have like buses that are like ghost tour buses.
I have only seen them in like Edinburgh, I feel like. Edinburgh, Scotland. But I do remember them there. And I remember thinking, I don't know. So.
Have you ever, what has been the ghost experience that has paid off the most for you? Because I know we've been on ghost tours, and most of the time you're like, we didn't see a ghost.
Well, I just want to be creeped out. I don't even care if like I never experience anything really. I just want to be scared. But I would say probably there was a haunted house we went to in Tulsa years ago. Probably almost 20 years ago. Probably like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And we went through with our friends Chad and Sarah. And I remember, and it was just like in a little like strip mall. And they had turned the space on the inside into a haunted house. And it was supposedly based on a real story of horror that had happened in Tulsa. And so it had like this real theme to it. They also, the way they were allowed to touch you inside this haunted house, and that freaked me out. And I remember they made us, I'm loving this now. I'm so glad you asked. They made us, at one point, it was like we were in a kitchen and they were like, we wanted to get out and leave the room. And they were like, well, if you're going to leave the room, there's only one way out. And they opened up the oven. And they're like, you have to crawl into the oven. And the oven turned into this tunnel that took you into another room. And at some point we also ended up in a closet that went on forever and ever and ever, and it was pitch black and you could feel the clothes on either side of you, but also people would reach out and grab you from between the clothes. And I was like, this is brilliant.
I will let everyone know that approximately 2/3 of the way through that haunted house, Hilarie and Sarah just decided to run the rest of the way.
It was the last room. It was not 2/3
ran
of
off.
the way. It was the last room.
A big part of the haunted house left to go. And so it was just Chad and I, two dudes, walking through the rest of the haunted house together.
It was not. It was two girls. So you're welcome. Oh, that was a good time. Oh. But that was my favorite haunting experience.
Well, we've got a lot of ghostly things to tell you about today. In this episode of the Travel FOMO podcast, we are actually wrapping up our middle of nowhere season. Yeah. This is the very last episode and the last stop in our gap year adventures.
Oh, wah, wah.
But we are keeping the podcast going. Like we still have a lot of adventures to bring you. We'll tell you more about that later. But for today, it was our last stop, and it was a really good one in Sedona.
That's right. Oh, it was, I love Sedona. I love the desert a lot more than I realized. I think more and more over time, I'm starting to love it.
Yeah, I actually appreciated the desert too, more than I kind of thought I would. And especially in Sedona, I do feel like despite it being the desert, it's still really colorful there. Yeah. And you know, the red rocks, and there is some like green, and it's that whole like, I think they call it the painted desert look that is actually really pretty.
Yeah, beautiful.
And Sedona is just kind of cool anyway. Like it's in between Phoenix and Flagstaff, if you're not familiar. There's a couple ways to get there. If you're hauling an RV like us, there's one way to get there because of the length of the RV but there's some really scenic roads that you can take if you're not hauling a rig, that I think would be really cool drives. So look into that stuff if you are going to Sedona and figure out like, how am I going to drive in and which way is going to be best?
Yeah.
Because you're surrounded by these huge red rock walls and mountains just everywhere around you. They're so pretty. And the city of Sedona, it's got this different kind of vibe to it. It has a really thriving art scene. They're really particular about everything in Sedona and how things look. And when McDonald's came to Sedona, they weren't sure that the golden arches would go with their aesthetic. So they told McDonald's, like the McDonald's Corporation, that they couldn't put up their logo, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
So McDonald's actually changed the color of their arches for this particular store to like turquoise.
That's insane.
And it's the only one in the world.
That's crazy.
So the only McDonald's in the world that doesn't have the golden arches, that has turquoise arches, is there in Sedona. So if you want to see that and have a quarter pounder, feel free, and you can thank the city officials for the turquoise arches. It's actually kind of a young city in the grand scheme of things. I think settlers first arrived in Sedona in like 1902, which is really recent. And it didn't grow very big or very fast. I think we read that in the 50s, they first kind of put a phone book out for just Sedona, and there's only like 155 people in it.
That's crazy.
So
it's grown so much since the 50s.
Yeah. It's actually a good sized city now with a lot to do there.
We really enjoyed our time there. We stayed at Rancho Sedona RV Park. Highly, highly recommend it. It was well maintained. It was gorgeous RV park. It sits in a valley on the outskirts of town, and it's super easy to access. It's got a ton of tree coverage. There's a little river that runs, beside it. So you've got all this white noise at night, and really nice like spots where you pull in too. So like really level gravel. If you're an RVer, these things really matter.
Yeah.
There was some concrete pads with really nice tables at each spot. We just really felt like we hit the jackpot with this specific RV park. We loved it.
Yeah, it was really great and so quiet, like just quiet and peaceful, which I think kind of like carries over into the whole kind of Sedona thing. Like it's sort of Sedona's just like a relaxing getaway. Like
right.
A lot of spas and outdoor activities. Like there's hiking. Some of the big hikes are like Devil's Bridge, Cathedral Rock. There's a Snoopy Rock trail.
Or at least these are different mountain views and stuff that you want to catch, And
we did some hiking there. If you don't want to get super into the hiking, or you feel like you physically couldn't do something like that, you have kids with you or something, they actually do something called pink Jeep tours, and you're literally in a pink Jeep and they'll drive you around and kind of take you to see that nature and stuff that a lot of the hikers are getting.
And we even took Maggie on the Devil's Bridge hike, and that was a far more intense hike than I expected.
Yeah.
And I was super surprised, like to the extent we didn't go all the way with Maggie and you stayed back and I finished the hike, or went to the point, and there were so many people on that hike. So it's very, very popular, very Instagrammable because of how you can take photos there. But I will warn you, tons of people, like you will wait in a line to go take a certain photo.
Yeah.
So much so you will never see a photo of Jamin and I on Devil's Bridge because it's not worth it. I thought it was crazy too, because you remember all the little toddlers that parents brought on that hike?
Yes.
And I was just
Yeah.
like, this is so dangerous. I cannot believe. And parents, you could tell, were just like, oh crap, what have we done?
There were a lot of people that you could tell were in over their heads.
Yes.
On that thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, like you said, it's very Instagrammable, kind of in every direction.
Yes.
And I think people get a little carried away.
Yeah. Yeah. There was just some moments with, the kids, and then we had Maggie, and it was like, whoa. There's a lot going on. But if you're not into hiking, you can also do some shopping, the spas and shopping and stuff like that. I will say there's a bunch of little shops and boutiques you can go to. We went to a hat store, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
We also went to Sedona Outdoors, and I feel like every time I've been to Sedona, I've always been into this shop, and I always love it. I've bought some favorite things there, including this really cool cardigan that I still own and I still love. And it's also a great place if you show up in Sedona and you don't have the sporty outdoor stuff that you need. It's a really great place to go get the gear that you need. And so, if you're looking to go on a hike or something, check out Sedona Outdoors if you're not prepared.
Yeah, they do have all the stuff you need.
Yeah. And then there was also some thrift stores that we went to that I had no way expected to go to a thrift store, but there were so many. I was like, these actually look pretty cool. Let's go inside. And then I think I ended up buying myself some stuff along the way.
Yeah,
so.
you got a few things. I don't think that I got anything, but there were an odd number of them there, and they seem to be kind of dominant in the city,
mm-hmm.
and we're actually pretty good. Like
mm-hmm.
a lot of good stuff, which is it's just funny. Well, there's a lot of good food options in Sedona as well. They kind of have a main thoroughfare where you can see amazing views as you walk along, go into these boutiques, but then also have some really good food.
Yeah.
We went to Sedona Beer Company and had like burgers. They had a lot of great merchandise and stuff like that, their own beers and
mm-hmm.
things, which is cool. They had like a patio where they put out these little, like there were little blankets on every chair.
Yeah.
So you could sit out on the patio. And so they just like did a really good job of creating good vibes.
Yeah.
And I feel like Sedona is one of those places that if you're going to have a place, you're going to have to go to a little more effort. That's kind of the norm that they've established there. And so I feel like that pays off for everybody. That like you get a better, more unique experience because of the kind of the culture that they created there.
I love that place had the patio because sunsets are so crazy beautiful in Sedona. Yeah. And it gives you another opportunity to be outside at the right time to see mm-hmm. the sunset. And they like help facilitate it with, with those blankets you mentioned. And it just made the idea of sitting outside to see the sunset a little bit more feasible.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
If you're in Sedona, definitely know what time the sun is going to set and mm-hmm. plan to be in a place where you can see it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Let's move on to Jerome because we have so much to talk about Jerome. I feel like Sedona is so well known, and every time somebody mentions it, I always go, but did you go to Jerome nearby? And nobody ever does.
No.
So I'm like super excited to talk about it. I had first found out about it years ago. A friend from high school had introduced me to it, and then I got to revisit it with Lamar and Ashley. So Jerome, Arizona is a mountainside town. It's a ghost town. It's probably the most accurate way to describe it.
And about how far from Sedona is it?
That's a great question. I feel like it was about an hour. Or less?
Yeah, it feels like 45 minutes to an hour drive.
Yeah.
So not far at all.
Not far. You could definitely make a day trip of it, which is what we did.
Yeah.
And there's a population of like 450 people. It's this super vertical city, if you can, or town, ghost town, if you can imagine. So wear some comfortable shoes because there's not a lot of places to park. You're probably gonna park one time and then walk your way up this mountain through all these zigzag streets. And that's cool. That's the cool part about it, right? And also that means every little shop is looking off the mountain. So there's views everywhere you turn. You're looking out across the desert from the top of this mountain.
Yeah, it's like a tiny Wild West version of Monte Carlo.
No.
Just
Ooh, neat.
on this cliff with all these zigzag little streets that
Minus the
you're
ocean.
somehow always going uphill.
Yes, exactly. Love it. And Jerome has such a traumatic history. It was kind of came to life because of all of the mining that was happening in the area. And then it was destroyed. Most of the city was destroyed by a fire in 1898. And it also, you reminded me of this, I had forgotten, but it was labeled the wickedest town in the West. And why was that? Remind me why they call it that?
So, because it was a mining town and all these copper mines are the reason the town existed, those miners would partake in a lot of unsavory activities. So most of the town was like brothels and opium dens and stuff like that. And that like just all the greed around like all the mining and everything that came.
Yeah.
There was just a lot of unsavory activity going on.
Well, and the ghosts, of course.
Oh, yeah, and the ghosts. I forgot about all the ghosts that are still there. All the ghosts.
That are still there.
And,
there. In the 1920s, it was actually considered one of the largest cities in Arizona. I mean, they had a bank, they had saloons, they had hotels, they had a newspaper, they had a hospital, which you'll hear a lot more about. Its presence is still there. And then after in like the 50s, after the copper mines closed, that's when it really became like a ghost town. So it's kind of crazy how big and influential it was and how quickly it came crashing down. And now today it's kind of starting to thrive a little bit more again, but really just still quaint. And it's really just art displays, some restaurants, maybe a handful of tiny little hotels.
Yeah, it's very Marfa, Texas in that way.
Oh, yes. Good comparison.
Of where you're like, okay, I can see that in the 50s there was a city here.
Right.
And now there's a bunch of art. Like artists and places like selling art, but it doesn't seem like a city anymore somehow. And like it's very much got that vibe to it.
Yeah. And they've done a very good job of I feel like they've done a really good job of leaning into the history of Jerome. Marfa's more like, ooh, we are what we are today.
Right.
And Jerome is more like, look at what we were in the past. And everywhere you walk, there's these plaques and stuff like that. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I just keep thinking about like how winding and crazy those streets were.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in the mountains with these crazy windy streets that were never intended to have like big vehicles on them. So don't take your RV.
Oh my gosh.
To Jerome.
No.
In fact, when we were there, we saw a huge coach, like a big RV, and they were like stuck on one of the corners.
Oh my goodness.
For all I know, they're still there because I don't know how they were going to get out of that.
Well, hadn't they like tried to back up into some driveway or something and it was like too steep?
Well, yeah, they realized that they couldn't make the corner. And so they tried to back up into this driveway.
Oh my God.
It was too steep. And so then they were just stuck.
I don't even know how you would tow them away either.
Now, I have no idea how they got out of that spot.
Yeah. Like,
it was wild. And I just remember thinking, I feel so bad for that dude.
And we saw them all day. Like when we left, they were still there.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. This was not like,
not
getting solved anytime soon.
Oh, man. If you guys have ever been to Jerome and you've seen anybody like haul something that they shouldn't, I'd be really interested in those stories because that's got to happen multiple times in that city. If you don't know where you're headed and you realize you're there, like, what do you do?
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and like, I think it just goes to show you, like, research your routes before you go. And if you get to something where you can see, like, I don't know about this, it's time to stop and back it out now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, don't keep going.
Yeah. Well, and if depending on what direction you're coming from, you're either coming from Sedona or you're coming from the mountains.
Right.
And if you're coming from the mountains, I have to say it's a beautiful view. One thing about Jerome, I mentioned earlier, they really focus on the history. It's like basically you could go on a scavenger hunt across the town and learn about all these different buildings that they have. And every little spot where there's an old building, they've got plaques to tell you about the history of these buildings. And I will say some of these places, do you remember it was more like a ruin than an actual building?
Yeah. There were a lot of places that were basically just the old brick walls of what used to be a building.
Which is crazy because that means like the property must not be worth a whole lot, or someone be selling that property and doing something with it.
It really is in that way a ghost town.
Yeah.
And you can see that there's only a couple hundred people that live here now.
Right.
And there used to be a lot more. And now it's just here.
Yeah. I mean, like they'll have like old trucks that are like all rusted out and everything. One that we saw was actually, it used to be kind of like the fire truck, I guess, for the city. And it was like this rusty old 1937 Dodge fire truck. And it was actually built for the city specifically because they understood that this city has very steep grades and really narrow streets, and they would build the fire trucks accordingly. And then they've got another one that's a 1928 version, and it was actually restored really well. And so it's at the police station, and they even use it for parades and stuff like that. So they're super into this stuff. They've got plaques everywhere. So take some time whenever you are there as you're walking the streets, watch for those plaques and like stop and read about the place that you're standing in front of and the history behind it, because they've gone to such great lengths to make that possible. So there's also little places to eat. We ate at the Haunted Hamburger. And
why do we think you picked that place?
The really funny part is I was looking for someplace different, but there's just not a lot of options because I'd already eaten here before with Lamar and Ashley. But yeah, the Haunted Hamburger place is really interesting because it's been around a long time. The building was constructed back in 1910, and it was actually a boarding house for the local copper miners. And they would take so many shifts back to back, and all of their work schedules were crazy. And sometimes a bed in that boarding house actually was slept on by 3 different guys in one day. Which is crazy. Kind of a crazy. And then you think about coming in from the mine. Are they like, it's 1910. Are you like taking a bath every time you come in? Like, no. Probably not. So it's probably some pretty dirty
You're just getting your nasty, sweaty butt in that bed.
And then if that place is really like, if there are brothels and stuff everywhere too, like you don't even know. Like I was like, oh, but the first mine closed during the Great Depression, and so then at that point, a local family converted the boarding into a private residence, and they had different generations of their family living on different floors, and eventually they went and sold the building, and it's been passed down a few times, and then now it is owned by a couple that actually came to Jerome for a day trip like 20 years ago or so, and they saw this boarded up building for sale, and they're like, wouldn't that be crazy to open a restaurant and sell haunted hamburgers? And then fast forward to today, it's actually a place that they decided to call Haunted Hamburger because in the process of renovating, some really strange things started to happen, and there were doors opening and shutting on their own, and there were hammers and tools that went missing, and they'd be found somewhere else the next day. And then construction was delayed for a lot of these reasons, and the locals began to tell this couple that now were the new owners, they began to tell them about all the crazy experiences that had been actually happened in that building before. And so that's where they decided to just run with the name Haunted Hamburger. And now today it's been featured in magazines and travel guides and all kinds of stuff. And I believe, based on what they say on their menu, it's also been featured in the Rachel Ray TV show at some point. And it's a local favorite, clearly. And it's also one of the only places to eat. So you are highly likely to eat there, should you go.
They did have good hamburgers and very few specters.
Specters? What's a specter?
A ghost.
Oh. I should probably know that.
You probably should, given your fascination. Well, and then as we walked around, we also had cocktails at a really cool little bar called the Click Scale. Bartender was really nice. Told us about his experience of kind of living there.
That was kind of our vibe too. We love a good place to sit down and have a cocktail. I think it's also a hotel, and they just had really good cocktails. And I was looking back at their menu, and it looks very yummy.
Yeah.
That might be an option for lunch next time.
Their menu did look really, really good. And then we went to the place that Hilarie was like dying to get to. The Asylum restaurant at the Jerome Grand Hotel. The Jerome Grand Hotel, it really is like the building in the city.
Yes.
It's kind of at the top of the hill, sort of dominates everything. It was actually built to be a hospital in 1926. Was considered one of the most modern hospitals in Arizona at that time. It was like built to be state of the art. Everything. It was like 30,000 square feet. And huge. Built to be this sort of gem of the city.
Yeah.
This really nice new hospital.
Yeah. Well, and when you're on a mountainside, a place that big is really big.
Yes. Yeah.
And they, super state of the art at the time. They had like patient call lights, balconies. Right.
In your
hospital room. Sun porches. There was emergency backup lighting, which I guess was a really big deal back then. A self-service elevator, ice making rooms, laboratories, x-rays, major and minor surgical facilities, men's and women's and children's wards, private and semi-private rooms, which if you think back, you can imagine like all these old hospitals used to have like bed after bed after bed in a big old room, and now they're getting into more and more private rooms. They had closets that were just for blanket warming, and they even had housing for some of the staff, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, when you think about like all of that being in a hospital, like it is pretty wild. And it was used kind of as a recruitment tool for the city. Like, hey, we look at this facility that we have. But ironically, like it's estimated that 9,000 people died there.
That's a lot.
Which was at the pace when it operated, because it became a ghost town like fairly quickly after this hospital was built. And so someone was estimating that it was about a person a day was dying at this hospital.
Seems like a lot to me.
Yeah. It closed in 1950, but it closed operation as a hospital, but the city maintained it for 20 years after that, like kept it furnished and kept it maintained, I guess with the idea of like, maybe we will open this back up at some point.
The owner, the
owner, not the city, but the owner was like, well, maybe we'll be able to use it as a hospital. So they maintained the building to be able to operate fully furnished, just
in hopes that they would start it back up again.
Yeah, in hopes that the city would grow to the point of needing it. But for 20 years they did that.
That's a really long time to have a fully furnished hospital at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's insane.
It is insane. And then eventually they realized it was never going to be a hospital again, and the owner hired a live-in caretaker to at least be there and take care of it and keep it safe from vandals and stuff. But then eerily, so that was for years as well. And then eerily, the caretaker committed suicide in the 1980s. I think that's haunting related. And then eventually local police and others started to keep an eye on it to try to keep it safe from vandals. So it basically, from like when it closed in 1950, was completely unused.
Right.
Until somebody else bought it and turned it into a hotel, which was then in 1994.
So they had to take on this massive project of doing all these things to make it a functioning hotel, one of which was creating a parking lot, because in the 20s when it was built, no one's driving. So they had like 12 parking spaces.
Yeah.
Now you're creating a hotel that everyone's driving to. So you have to have a place for everyone to park. So they had to take 1,000 dump trucks worth of rock and things to clear space to make a parking lot. And that just got them like 70 spaces.
That's a lot of dump trucks per space.
Right. Like that's a ton of clearing that they had to do. They were in such a hurry to kind of get it operational that they applied stucco to the outside of the building, but they did it in such a hurry and in such a way, didn't let it cure like the way they originally kind of would have. That lime leached through, and instantly it looked 100 years old, even though it was brand new. And yeah, it looked haunted. And so like, you've got this old building that was a hospital and asylum where all these people died. I'm sure they're trying to fade that look when they're creating this nice hotel. And then like, boom, instantly like the lime leaches through and you have haunted look already.
That's hilarious. That's so, I thought that was a great story. And it was haunted. So maybe it's all supposed to work out just like that. Because it's been said that the head nurse, basically the nurse in charge, was really upset with the removal of some desk. Okay. Now we're finding out about this like in 1994, right? This old head nurse from the hospital is making her presence known. She's upset about the removal of the desk. And so the owner had placed the original hospital desk in storage at some point during that transition as they're trying to turn this into a hotel from a hospital. And so they put these desks away, and eventually a tenant who was there found 2 cabinets that had been stored in the back of these hotel garages. And the tenant asked the owner, could he use them? And these original counter height desks that are these cabinets that he found were eventually relocated back to almost their original spot and just a few feet from where they used to be. And to date, the head nurse has made no more complaints about the desk being removed because now they're back where they belong. I thought that was a really, really interesting story. And if I remember correctly, when we were there, you could go and you could sign a visitor's book, and you could write, I'm pretty sure you could write a story. Maybe you just sign your name, and then you could go online, and online, you could share your story of any supernatural experience that you've had. I'm nearly positive there's like an online place where you could go and read all the stories.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you can go in the hotel and in the lobby and see the elevator that was like one of the first of its kind and one of the first in Arizona.
And also killed a man.
Oh, and killed someone. So it was also haunted.
That's right.
But cool stuff. And then you actually go in a different entrance to go in the restaurant where we had dinner.
Yes, a really grand staircase leads up to this silent restaurant.
And it was really cool. We got to watch the sunset.
It's a great place to watch the sunset.
And the food was really good. Like, service was great. But just kind of a cool little spot to have dinner.
Yeah.
And you really hoping to see a ghost while we ate.
And I was hoping for some good stories, but like, I think some of them who work there and live there are just kind of like, yeah, whatever. and I'm sure every day somebody asks them, like, tell me a good story. And they're kind of like, whatever. But they were really, really kind. The food was really good. And it was surprisingly sparse. Like, for being such a dominant presence in the town, there wasn't a ton of people there eating dinner that night. I think it was us and 2 other tables maybe.
Yeah, the city really did kind of clear out. Like, I feel like a bunch of people came in for the day to like walk around and read all the plaques and stuff. And then and the burger place where we had lunch, there was a lot of people. Like, it was pretty crowded.
That's true. It was very lively.
But
there was a wait, if I remember.
Yeah. But by the time dinner rolled around, we ate at that restaurant, like, there wasn't many people, and there wasn't a lot of places open when we left and drove through, and it wasn't late at night.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
we had like a kind of an early dinner and then had to drive back through the city to go back to Sedona.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty dead.
Mm-hmm.
Most everyone was gone.
Most everyone had already gone to bed because they were so scared of the ghost.
Because of all
They're
the
like, we don't want to
ghosts.
stick around at night here. There are some wild stories of things that people have experienced in the Jerome Grand Hotel. So you can go find those on Reddit and all the places where there are scary stories. But if you look up Jerome, Arizona, you will definitely find that it is one of the most haunted places in America. So it's got some fun stuff out there about it. And that right there wraps up our middle of nowhere season. What a great way to end
The ghost
on this
story.
ghost town in the middle of nowhere, Arizona.
It is kind of ironic that we started in London with one of the biggest cities in the world
Yeah.
and ended in Jerome, like one of the smallest.
Yeah. Good point.
But lots of crazy stuff that we saw in between. And that is the last of our gap year adventures, but not the end of the podcast.
That's right. We've got our next episode coming up is going to highlight some of the things that we've been talking about over these last few seasons. We'll talk about USA and Canada, our top places to RV in the U.S. We'll talk about our favorite national parks, our top hikes, and then some of the things that we learned as new RVers. We'll kind of wrap that up and summarize that in a real tight podcast for y'all. So if you just need the highlights and you're not able to go back and dig into all the episodes, that'll be a really good one for a lot of people. And then we'll talk a little bit about what it's like to go back to reality and go back to work after taking a gap year. And was it really worth it when it was all said and done?
Yeah.
So.
We'll talk about all our favorite things and our recommendations. We're also going to be doing that in a new format. So we are going to start filming the podcast. So if you watch our companion videos through YouTube and or listen through YouTube, we're going to start filming our conversations and posting that out there. We'll lay footage over some of it so that you can kind of see the things that we're talking about, sort of enhance that experience. And then we'll obviously keep posting to all of our regular podcast platforms. So if you just listen to the podcast, you'll be able to keep doing that. Those episodes will still come out for you. But if you haven't gone out and checked out YouTube, this would be the time to do it. We're going to switch things up and make things new and sparkly for our next seasons and all of our upcoming adventures. So we're excited about that. If you want to support us, going out to YouTube and subscribing, find your favorite videos or episodes of the podcast and share them with someone or leave a comment. That would help us out a lot. So if you want to keep us going and help others find us, that's a great way to do it.
That's right. And we super appreciate that. I feel like I'm a little shy to really ask hey, please like and subscribe, because it really does make an impact and it helps us, kind of feel like, what do people like? What do people, want us to gravitate towards? Because we want to be helpful. And, we were just talking about this yesterday. I really feel like with this podcast, what we hope is that people can see that travel is accessible and that these amazing things that are across the world, like going to other countries, going to other places, it can happen and you can do it affordably. And there's an opportunity for everyone to get to experience that. And it doesn't have to be a gap year. Right. We did it in a gap year format, but that also really helps shine a light on how you can go to these places really affordably, because by all means, we took the most affordable approach when we were trying to cram as much as we could into a season of not working.
Yeah.
So I hope that this helps people feel like they can do some of these things. And on that note, just a reminder to like and subscribe on YouTube.
You can also reach out to us via email at the travelfomopodcast@gmail.com. Like Hilarie said, the reason that we do this is to make travel accessible and seem doable. So if you do have questions or you think there's something that maybe we could help you with when it comes to travel, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to give any advice from what we've learned or maybe point you in the right direction. If there's something that you'd like for us to share with everyone, you'd like for everyone to know about travel, and you want us to include it in a podcast, send it to us via email and we'll get it plugged in.
That's right. All right, guys, life is short.
Wonder well.